Welcome to the Business Mechanics Show. I'm your host, Vaughn Sigmund, the co-founder of Results Driven Leadership. We provide the knowledge, skills, and tools you need to advance your career and, most importantly, your business success. Whether you're just getting started or you've been running businesses for years, we have the advice and tips to help you stay ahead of the competition. And listen, it all comes from real executives, not some trained trainers who learn stuff from a book. So let's get down to it today, folks. Today, we're going to be talking about how to unleash your team's growth with delegation. Now, we've talked about this before, but we're going to add the element that's really important to this. And everybody that is into developing their team members has to understand you can't be shy about making them really uncomfortable. You got to put them into discomfort to build muscles. As we go through this today, I'm going to be joined by my partner, Eric Van Doren, executive coach and leadership trainer. So don't go away.
Productivity, winning strategies, and aligning employer-employee goals. If this sounds like something your business could use more of, then you've come to the right place. The Business Mechanics Show with your host, Vaughn Sigmund. Let Vaughn show you how to develop, improve, and jumpstart your business. So now, please welcome the host of The Business Mechanic, Vaughn Sigmund.
Now, let me just talk about my own experience. I can remember very early on, early in my career, I was filled with nerves, uncertainty when I was put into my first management position. But thank God I had the guidance of Ted Boswell. He was a very seasoned leader. He had over 20 years of experience. And let me tell you, Ted was that guy that took me under his wing, and I quickly learned the power of growth. However, I didn't know it at the time because Ted made me very uncomfortable. He put me in situation after situation of discomfort. But Ted understood the importance of transition as people from doers to leaders. And he had to instill not only that into me, but I had to instill that into people reporting to me so we were all growing all the time. But Ted recognized and realized and executed that it's all important for us to be doers. That got us the notice to become a leader or a manager, be put in that position. But to become a really true, valuable leader, and Ted understood that he had to nurture me and also the potential of others. He was a super strong advocate for leadership through delegation. And like I mentioned previously, we've talked about this delegation topic as a developmental tool before, but I wanted to take it down to a little deeper level. Because Ted, as I think back on my experience with him, he understood that his expertise was limited. He only knew what he knew. But if he brought in the collective knowledge of his entire team, that mindset, that collective pool of knowledge, enabled him as a leader to not only see his entire team, understand their strengths, their weaknesses, but then he could selectively delegate challenging tasks, which gave us super valuable opportunities to learn. So instead of Ted telling us what to do all the time, controlling us, commanding control, he empowered us. He empowered us, and he replaced urgency with patience. And he replaced his expertise with curiosity. And Ted's approach allowed us to then start building our confidence, become more comfortable. But every time we started, it was very uncomfortable. He put us into challenge after challenge. to get us to grow. And I might not have liked it a lot at the time, but man, I look back on it, I so appreciate what Ted did. So I'm going to bring Eric in now. Eric, you and I have had similar backgrounds. I was managing people decades and decades ago. And as excited as I was to go do this, I also thought, holy crap, I don't have a clue what I'm doing. But I had a Ted, and I know you had someone very important in your life. Who was your mentor, Eric, that forced you into discomfort by delegating duties and responsibility to you with little or no experience?
Yeah, for me, it was Scott Smith was my guy, my mentor through the early days. I was in my 20s and I was the guy in Southern California. So I knew it all. Everyone looked to me, but then I transferred me to his area and it turned out that he was always fostering challenging, always challenges everybody. So I went into this area running a place and he had 4 or 5 go-tos. And now I was just one of the go-tos. So he fostered this competition model, which at the time I had no idea what he was doing other than, hey, go do this, go try this. I got an issue over here. Who wants to do it? My hand was the fastest hand in the West. So every time I'm good. And everyone's, I can't, I'm good. I'm going. I need you to go travel to Seattle. Gone. Good. So whatever it was, I jumped at it. So he allowed for that. And then after that, it was really about it wasn't about the job you did necessarily. It was about the feedback that you gave to him and reverse back to you, where you say, oh, I didn't think of that. And the idea behind it, he created all those things. I think you said some expertise to patience for himself. He was not a patient person. No, this was hard for him to do after later on when I got to know him more.
So it was
But
uncomfortable for Scott too.
it really was. So we were all growing at the same time. The sea was rising at the same time while I was just packing in information and skills, how to do certain things and how to figure those things out and get hard feedback. Vaughn, I'm talking feedback where you just say, I'm not even sure if I can tie my shoe. Those type of situations.
Well,
That's fun.
mine was a little more gentle than that, but I remember my first big assignment was that I knew had the potential of moving up. Was that Ted sent me to Gadsden, Alabama to clean up that location, clean it up. And I said, wow, okay, I was really honored. Man, did that feel good. So I got my little Mercury Monarch and I drove from Chattanooga, Tennessee to Gadsden, Alabama, a couple hours. Spent the night at the Holiday Inn, ate at the Denny's or someplace there, and got up the next morning. And I'm walking into the mall, getting ready to walk into this store that had to be cleaned up. And about the time I walked through the door, I said, hold on a second. I'm getting ready to walk in as a stranger. None of these people know who I am. And the manager that I have to go in and help clean up the store doesn't report to me. I'm not her boss. I've got to figure out how to get her buy-in. I've got to get her team's buy-in. I've got to figure out how to fix this place without everybody hating me. And it hit me like a brick wall. I've got to figure all this stuff out, and I've got to figure it out. Now, you and I both grew up in retail. There is no patience in retail.
No,
there's none. And whether Ted had patience or not, didn't really matter. I didn't have patience. And I think that's where Ted recognized the strength in me is I was driven to get stuff done, get it done right and get it done fast. And I think he wanted to exert some of that urgency into this location. I guess he was thinking one of these days, if Ted could even remember it, I'd ask him why the hell he chose me. But it was that the discomfort was I knew how to clean up the store. Is how do I go in and get the store cleaned up through others that they don't work for me? I'm just a visitor. And I had to figure out a lot of things fast. And whether I did it well or not, I don't know. The store got cleaned up and I got asked multiple more times to go clean up other locations. So I must have done something right. And what I didn't realize at the time, Ted was setting me up for multiple store management.
Same.
He was moving me from manager to district manager, but I didn't know it. It was just a project to me. Scott was doing the same thing for you too, wasn't he?
Absolutely. You never did everything completely great, even though you cleaned it up. You got your team buy-in. You know, they ended up loving you probably the same as me, more than their own manager. Enjoy the energy. You injected that energy, what you were going to infuse in there. And I think, yeah, for sure, he's setting you up for a position. And so when that position came, when you really got the job, it was like, this is it. This is all I got to do.
And you'd done
It
it.
was,
You had done it just in smaller bites, right?
yeah, certain pieces all the way in this. So it's nothing that was a surprise to you.
Yeah, you just had to put it all together. So,
That's right.
in the end, effective leadership development is crucial for any company success. It's certainly, if you are a executive manager within an organization, it's crucial for your success, your own personal development. But most importantly, this is back to Maxwell's five levels of leadership, is the success of your people.
Yeah.
The success of your people in the corporate world is going to be what propels you to success. I didn't realize it at the time. I think Ted knew it, but I was going along to play the game, but I just did not realize the impact long term all these opportunities were going to have on me. And then learning that guiding a team requires that delicate balance of skills that can be cultivated through leadership training. And as a manager, your growth is going to be intimately tied to your team members. And as I say all the time, no matter what business, you're in the people business. And if you embrace that thought and look at your teams as individuals and as a collective group, and understand the power of the individuals, the powers of the team, and then start selecting areas, opportunities to identify for their growth. Some people, it's very small growth, if any at all. But if you've got that person, I did another whole podcast on this, how you spot that talent. You got to spot it, like Ted thank God spotted it in me, and started working on my professional development. And he didn't warn me. He didn't tell me, Vaughn, go in and this is how you get people's buy-in. He didn't warn me that I'm going to have to go in and I'm going to be very uncomfortable with this situation. I just had to go in and embrace that discomfort and get joy and appreciation. Didn't realize it at the time. It didn't seem that way at the time, but I had to get that appreciation of the learning process. And the learning process means getting out of your comfort zone, because that's how you grow. And him assigning my task way beyond my capabilities, and remembering how I was stumbling and hurting my hip, but Ted didn't step in. He just let me do my thing. He let me struggle. He allowed me to struggle. He allowed me to make mistakes.
Yep.
But I think he also recognized, like Scott recognized in you, that through that struggle, I could figure it out. I would learn from my mistakes and I'd grow. Scott saw that in you.
Yeah, I think there's a big thing there. I think the struggle allows you to, I'll use the word think. I guess when you're being told what to do all the time, you're just doing it. You just become the doer. And the struggle of that piece, having to think through situations that did not come up.
Yeah.
And what else would you do? The line I think I've said to you many times, what else? What else could you have done? What else?
Yep.
What else could you have done? What else? I still got what else in my head. This is 30 years ago. So,
and I think it's really easy, especially under the command and control method. To your point, Eric, you can tell people what to do, how to do it, what to say, what not to say. You can control their every thought, but that's not growing them.
Nope.
Force them with little or no direction, and being patient and understand they're going to screw up, because I certainly didn't do it perfectly. I got better and better the more I did it, though. But that enables you through that absence of knowledge to learn to think, to your point. Because if
Yeah,
you tell people what to think, they're just going to rely on you for your knowledge.
that's right.
If you put people in the situation you and I are describing, you're going to force them into learning to think on themselves. And isn't that exactly what any leader or manager wants with their team, to make themselves disposable?
Yeah.
And the only way you're ever going to make yourself disposable is to teach people how to think, enable them to navigate confusion, allow them to make mistakes and learn from those valuable lessons. But at the same time,
Supporting.
you've got to
Yeah.
encourage, you've got to acknowledge, right? You got to, hey, I appreciate the good work. I couldn't have done it without you. And what did you learn? And I had that same conversation. It's funny. Did Scott and Ted know each other? What
I
else
don't know.
could you have done? What else could you have done in this, and exercising that muscle? I don't know. Think about it. Come up with something else. And just like with you, Eric, that layers something else on the next time you have the opportunity. You just keep getting
Exactly.
better and better. And certainly the second time I got sent out on one of these projects, I did so with a little bit more of a blueprint of how to do it, but I learned every time. And it was great. It was great. And I looked forward to that. And I think something else, and let me fact check this with you, Eric. I had already been doing that with my team. I didn't, but it wasn't conscious. I was just somehow naturally I was doing it. But my team could operate without me. So Ted felt comfortable not only putting me into that discomfort, but my team could run the store without me for some period of time.
Yep.
Because somehow I had already allowed my people to think for themselves. They didn't need Vaughn. And I think that's something that gets missed on a lot of people, especially managers who have to answer questions all day, every day, put out fires every day, all day. If you're having to do that, you're not doing this. Right, Eric?
True. Yeah, because every customer we have that we talk to is, I have to answer all the questions. I can never get myself free for space and thinking and all that stuff. It's one of the biggest things, because you have to have talent to be able to leave and to grow the other person's talent so they can have self-sustaining a store. For this case, you have to have that until a month in advance. Sometimes I was out there for weeks as figuring out.
But wherever you were leaving had to operate without you.
They did.
And so anyway, it's as we think about it, let me just pick your brain.
Yeah.
Do you remember a time or a situation where, outside of just generalizing, a specific situation where you had a great deal of discomfort? And when you look back on it, that really contributed a ton to your growth, but it didn't seem like it at the time.
Yes. Coming from a world of retailing for a number of times through school, I took up a position of shoemaking. And while I've dabbled in it when I was a kid through my dad's business, through Vans, and we went out and started a new company, and this is right after college, and I knew how to deal with people and manage people and be good to people, but I didn't know how to do the job of how to make a shoe. So I was out there, and my dad would say, this is what we're doing right here. Because we did everything from manufacturing the rubber, the soles, cutting the material, stitching the material, making the shoe, boxing the shoe, shipping the shoe out. It's A to Z of shoemaking. And I knew how to sell shoes, but not the other stuff. So yeah, the discomfort was enormous from being an expert in something than being a complete noob, I guess you can say.
Yep.
So that was the most uncomfortable. I was in Oklahoma, also another uncomfortable source at the time, from Southern California kid going to Oklahoma. So I had that 2 strikes on me, and I was newly married. So that was probably a 3rd strike.
Oh, wow. That was a time.
Yeah. So anyways, that was most uncomfortable I've ever been in that source, is really because I didn't have the knowledge to it. But I dove in, worked hell of a long hours. Dad showed me how to do each section. Like he said, those little pieces. This is how you mix the rubber. This is how you do the soles. This is how you do the cutting. This is how you stitch. Not this is how you make the shoe. This is how you make a vulcanized shoe. This is how you make a cold cure shoe. These are all the things that I had to learn, and that I learned probably 3 or 4 months. I was pretty good at all that stuff, and I could manage it and then hire to those job needs. And then I ran the plant.
Just stacking it up.
It was crazy, Vaughn. I'm just telling you, it was very uncomfortable. But I
Well,
persevered.
and to I think to that point, Eric, it's important if you're going to be delegating. This is a lot of people get waylaid by delegation in that they don't believe somebody can do it. They can only do it. Or somebody else is going to do it too slow. It's easier for them just do it right, do it fast. And that's going to keep you small. It's going to keep you right where you're at. You are not going to advance your career unless you're married in and married into the family or something. And the other key point too, you have to take into account, it doesn't just occur. You have to take into account the importance, the responsibilities, the level of risk of delegating things. So you might start a little small, work your way up. You might want to send somebody to Gadsden, Alabama, and not New York City to do it their first time. You might want to do a little under the radar, but it's just giving people those opportunities and let them fail. There's been books written on that.
Yeah. And
just let people fail.
I did that, Vaughn. I failed plenty. But when I got it, it gave me the opportunity to do that. Then I needed to, in turn, hire the next people to do those spots. At least I had some information, and then at least the information enough to train them and allow them to do the same things. And that's when you're like in a shoe factory, you're looking at, we had 50 people working, and I had to look at the 5 people that were new that would turn over every 2 months or so, because that's factory work turns quick. And that's how you train. Then you have somebody else to train that person because you trained them before, and that's just how it works. And then you can take a deep breath, and then you got to realize where all these things are going. Then it's the timing of the aspects, and you just continue to learn, and you have to give them rope. You really have to give them rope.
And so let me move to the next. I couldn't agree more. But let me move on to the next phase of this discomfort and delegation. And to be a good leader, you have to be a good facilitator.
Yeah.
And Ted was, and still is, an exceptional facilitator. But I didn't know anything other than Ted's facilitation skills. So I was lucky enough to be able to match Ted's facilitation techniques. Stuck with me forever. And as I exposed myself to other people, other teams, other companies out there, I realized that I had something special that others didn't have, but it all goes back to Ted. But what I learned from Ted is humbleness, first of all, is he acknowledged, and it was openly admitting of the fact he didn't have all the answers. Right. And he didn't expect us to either. But instead, he would gather small groups of us, if not all of us. And he probably had 12 or 13 direct reports. Mm-hmm. He'd gather us together, and he would encourage us to put together our collective expertise, our knowledge, our opinions, and facilitate learning from each other. We'd problem solve a team, a global issue together. And that is discomfort because you're sitting there with all your peers are coming up with answers, and sometimes they're dumbass answers. And how are you going to react to that? You just going to let them run with a stupid response to something that you might have to end up having to adopt? No way. Mm-mm. So again, it's so much of it is not only facilitation. In the end, it's being open and honest and transparent with your communication, but in a respectful way, because Ted, as facilitator, would never let me say, hey, that's a stupid ass damn idea. Mm-mm. I had to be able to politically say it in a way that wouldn't put the other person down. But I also had to keep myself, through discomfort, from having to adopt this dumb idea. And so But the beauty of the way Ted facilitated meetings is how we teach people to facilitate meetings is collaborate, make it a dialogue, not a monologue. You gather all that collective experience, facilitate learning from one another. And that sometimes begets more learning and more information coming out is when everybody's getting to contribute to the pool of collective knowledge. But in order to do that, Ted was a master at this. He knew how to ask questions, thought-provoking questions. And again, I should ask Ted this. Did he prepare those in advance? Who did he learn it from? But he always asked these questions that stopped us. And we've all been in that meeting where the boss has asked a question and the room goes silent. You remember those times?
Yeah.
And we're all looking down at our notepads or whatever. And it was like, who's going to be the first one to say something wrong? Right? I think I've got the answer, but I'm not going to say. In fact, I sat through an 8-hour class yesterday, a concealed carry class. Watch out, y'all. I'm carrying from now on.
Excellent.
But this was a Marine instructor, ex-Marine instructor, teaching, and he was an expert beyond experts. He's shot every type of firearm known to the military. He was an expert at most of them. And he's teaching this class, and he was very good at facilitating this class. He involved us. It wasn't just a monologue. And he'd ask the class a question. And my wife was sitting next to me. She was going through the class with me, and my wife and I are both not shy. And I think I know the answer. But through all these years of putting ourselves out there, we blurt out what we thought. And sometimes I was right and sometimes I was wrong. It's how the facilitator, in this case, John, was able to field that, turn it around when I was wrong. And I was wrong a couple times, and course correct me. It helped me understand why I was wrong without ever making me feel like a dummy. Ted was also a master at that. And it helps you think critically, analyze our approaches, extract lessons from every situation we're in. And managers and leaders out there listening to this podcast today, trying to get better at developing their team, the team approach in meetings is the perfect opportunity. Anybody know you're training anybody is to be able to facilitate it with asking a lot of questions and embodying the curiosity of everybody in that room to extract lessons in this pool of collected knowledge. You remember those early days, don't you, Eric?
I do. It's coming in like a tidal wave. And the cool thing is the great facilitators, and I had names in my head going through corporate facilitators, people that come in, people that were actually in the corporation that had a job, not just facilitating, but a job to do something. And then us in the field, and then HR facilitators. And I think the best ones are absolutely, I can't say anything new than what you said, but it's allowing everyone to have a take and having something go along, and it gets better as it goes. And I think that's a hard thing to do, but it's what you want. It's what you absolutely have to have with that stuff. The yes, and how about this? Oh, I like that idea. How can we continue to go? And somebody's, I want to piggyback on that. And they go on to another line. And then by the time you really don't even know where the idea came from. It just came.
Yeah.
And I've been to many situations where you go, and then that becomes you adopt that situation, whatever it is. And it's like magic. It's really crazy.
And somehow you had a part of that.
That's right.
There's a sense of pride that comes with that. And executives, managers, leaders, if you don't have this type of participation like Eric just described, where everybody is just spitballing and throwing out ideas and coming up with solutions or throwing their opinions into the pot, you're doing it wrong. And it's a skill. We can teach you how to do it. You can learn to do it.
Yeah.
Because we learned to do it. But somebody had to show us. We weren't born with it. I don't know that I think I probably would have followed my father's military style of managing by just screaming at people, because he was a drill sergeant. But even that worked in that environment, right?
Yeah.
Doesn't work so well maybe in the business world, but it's building and you said it earlier, so it's so important, is helping people to learn to think.
Yeah.
And you're never going to teach anybody to learn to think when you're telling them what to think. Just giving them their walking papers, giving them their action plan, and send them out there and doing it and reporting back. It's this whole facilitation and making sure everybody's participating, making sure you're getting thoughts and ideas out of everybody. And Eric, you can testify to this. You just said very often those things turned into big successes.
Yeah.
And very often managers get frustrated because they have a meeting, they tell everybody what they've got to do, everybody nods their head, okay, boss, I got you. And they go out there and they do it wrong, or they do it half-ass, or they only do part of it. And the manager gets all that, nobody listens to me. Yeah, because you're making them listen to you. You need to listen to them, pal.
Absolutely.
That's the big paradigm shift. In order to get things done, you've got to listen to them, not them listen to you. If you get nothing else from this podcast today, learn that.
Yeah, we had a little term. We had a little term on smaller meeting groups of 3 or 4 or 5. We used to think called an honesty table, because in meetings sometimes everyone,
that is so California.
It is.
I guarantee I didn't do that in North Carolina, Georgia, and Tennessee.
That was me. I brought that, but I promise you this, with the talent of the people that I had in there, because there's different titles into the group that was below me, but I said, listen, you can say anything you want to. We got to fix this problem. We just put one problem out there and we just laid it out. So either whoever was in charge of it or me being the boss, and we just chewed it up for 20 minutes. And then we came up with a solution afterwards. I'm like, and they felt good. They were a part of it. And we ran with it. And sometimes it worked. Sometimes it didn't work. But we were trying to change the world as we went.
And I'm going to tell one other story here, whether it's that important or not. You just reminded me, and our buddy John Karwalki was in on this meeting. We were in Portland, Maine, and business sucked. And we were going through one of those recessions in the mid-90s, and it was bad. And all the regional managers were in the room there in Portland, and Dan Reardon, our boss at the time. And again, this was uncomfortable, but Dan was a master of that too. Had us all in the room. He came in, and I didn't know whether it was an act or not, but man, we had to play like it wasn't, just in case it wasn't. He stood in front of us and says, business sucks. You're not going to get me fired. I'm going to leave now. I'm going to come back at 4:00 and you're going to tell me how you're going to fix business. And he left. We just got, what? Okay. He didn't say who was in charge. He didn't tell us what he wanted. You're just going to fix business. Yep. And that motivated the hell out of us, because none of us wanted to face his wrath when he came back, and we didn't have the answers. But man, it was a very resourceful meeting. I hated it. I hated every minute of it. But in the end, Dan comes back at 4:00. We had appointed a spokesperson. We had the typical flip charts and taped stuff to the wall, and here's our plan, and we'd redone it and prioritize it. We had a damn plan. Whether it was the right plan or not, I can't remember. I just remember that Dan walks back in that room at 4:00, and we're all sweating bullets. And today's podcast is all about being uncomfortable. Man, it was 8 of us in there. It was uncomfortable as hell. And we start presenting somebody, I think it was Kathy Eichenblatt was the celebrity spokesmodel that had to go through and present all this. I think we set her up for it because none of us wanted to be the go-to of his wrath. But Kathy presented it. Dan would ask some questions, but we all had participation in putting that stuff on the board. Yep. And so we all had either defenses or responses or explanations to it. It was a team effort.
Yeah.
And it's a long time ago, if memory serves me right, Dan accepted most of it. And we had to go execute. And so he again relied on the team. Okay, how are you going to go do this? It's a great plan. How are you going to go get it done? And so we again, another day,
That's right.
in beautiful downtown Portland, had to figure out how to then communicate, cascade this information down through the stores. And I remember we had some very positive impact on things. And I also remember the pride. That was one of those times where I really felt important. I really felt like an important leader. And it was due to his delegation, Dan's delegation, his whether it was through anger or through skill, and I love Dan to death. But that discomfort and the coming out positively at the end, we all joined together. I was a part of it. Everybody else was a part of it. But it was like, hey, wait a minute. We know what we're doing. And do you remember there was a time that being through some discomfort, that you came out the other end and do this delegation of discomfort, and you came out the other end that you realized, hey, wait a minute, I know what I'm doing. You remember that, Eric?
Sure. I mean, it's so much discomfort. I've had a few of those meetings too, by the way. I think that was all the way from 10 years later. I think we did the same meeting a little bit later, but it's the way it is with shrink. We had a shrink meeting, but that's not what I was going to talk about. But it came into my mind now, similar type of thing where we were hemorrhaging loss, people stealing, and this is not my story, but I got to finish it. Where we were shredding money. We had to go every dollar. We had to shred our money. We shredded money, fake money, not real money, fake money for almost 3 hours with shredding machines. So you had the sound of this noise of shredding money, and this is your region. This is what's happening. Your set of stores, your 75 stores, you're hemorrhaging $122,000 of business lost. Give it away. I think Ken was doing that one, and he's like, yep, give it away some more. And after we got done with, I'm serious, it was 3 hours of those machines. It just drove you. That's okay. Now you're pissed. You're done. You're tired. What are we gonna do? So it's kind of the same kind of story. You got me on that line. And we went in, we fixed the shrink, we came with then we had a cascade. Same story, same line. We fixed it. Became great shrink in our stores, and it comes with an attitude, right? As everything in retail is an attitude, especially loss is an attitude. And there was a lot of discomfort and a lot of people. So we had a cascade, not necessarily the discomfort, but the mindset of, it isn't comfortable if you're going to make a change and become better or grow, it's discomfort is the number one first thing. First, you have to admit to the discomfort, and then you got to go ahead and fix the discomfort.
And to that point, just to expand on it a little bit, is if you're comfortable all the time as a leader, you're not growing. No. If your team is comfortable all the time, they're just a well-oiled machine, they do it right the same way every day, that's great, but they're not growing either.
No.
And so, there's always challenges to fix. You can ignore them, you can live with them, or you can do something about it. And we never worked with anybody that lived with anything. No. We had to fix it. And all the folks that are listening to this podcast, just please, the takeaway from today, as I start bringing this home for us, to excel. And let's just dwell on that word for a second. Absorb that word, to excel. You can be normal, you can be average, but I don't think you're taking the hour to listen to this podcast to be average. No. You want to excel. And to excel as a manager, to excel as a leader, continuous learning and adaptation and discomfort is essential. The corporate world is ever evolving, always evolving. You have to be proactive about that. And you in turn have to meet those challenges through your people. You're only as good as the people you lead. The true measure of a leader is the success of those they lead. And staying ahead in a leadership role requires ongoing effort, discomfort, thinking, to hone your skills, to embrace new strategies. What got you here is not going to get you there. That's the discomfort. Everybody can stay nice and comfortable in their cocoon.
Yep.
And maybe you'll be fine, but you're not growing.
Yeah.
And I don't think anybody's taking the time to listen to this today is not interested in growing. But facing that change and that discomfort is hard. And until you become practice at it, know that everything's going to be okay. It will be okay. Eric, will it be okay?
It will be.
It absolutely will.
It will.
You know, you've got, and maybe there's other things you need to do. Maybe there's leadership development workshops. Maybe there's leadership training or management training workshops that you need to attend, or you need to get your team to attend. You got to always be upskilling yourself and upskilling your team. And if you are, you're going to continue to excel as a leader.
Yeah, I think there's a line there. You mentioned a few great lines in here. Continuous learning, obviously, is a huge piece. And I think there's a thing that we came at the end, like 6-7 years ago, John, our cohort, who came up with a thing is, would you hire yourself in that position? So we had that thing all the time. We said to ourselves, would you hire yourself? If not, or yeah, of course, I've had all these sales. But if you're not growing and keeping up with everything else is going on and you're in that comfort zone, you got to fight through it. You got to fight through the discomfort. You got to be learning new stuff, learning new skills, challenging yourself at all times. And I think, would you hire yourself?
I think most people would say yes, based on the mindset and the environment in which they're working. However,
That's what I'm saying. However,
yeah.
things
However,
change.
Yeah. Let's change your paradigm on how you're thinking about yourself and your team. And are you a winner?
That's right.
Are you an exceptional manager? And yet again, that is, let's bring this home and go drink some beer. But to be an exceptional manager, be an exceptional leader, that always involves recognizing your team's potential, not where they're at, their potential. Just like Ted recognized in me, Scott recognized in Eric, he saw potential. And then support their development, lead by example, embrace the challenge of leadership training, which doesn't have to cost a dime, by the way. We'd love for you to invest in some of our programs. We could fast track some things, but listen, just delegating and making yourself uncomfortable, creating this continuous learning, this continually, your ability to continually refine your skills for successful leadership journey. Visit our website, rdltraining.com. Please share, subscribe to this podcast. That really helps us find more listeners just like you, so we can help them out too. So visit our website, RDL Training. At the top of our show notes today, I'm going to put a link for you to sign up for our newsletter. I'll also put a note in there if you guys would ever like to join Eric for an open office hours. When do you do open office hours, Eric?
I'm doing it at 9 a.m. on Wednesdays.
9 a.m. every 9 a.m.
Pacific Standard Time. Every Wednesday,
Pacific,
I'm there.
or daylight time.
Sure.
Okay.
Or daylight time.
Pacific time. Every Wednesday, 9 to 1, 11?
9 to 10, 1 hour.
9 to 10. 9 to 10, 1 hour for free. Come on in, join us. Talk about your challenge, talk about your situation, get free advice from the master himself, Eric Van Doren. So thank you again all for listening. I'll put a link to office hours in the show notes as well. Sign up for those, put them on your calendar, make yourself an appointment. Utilize that free resource for yourself. That's how you grow. Involve others in your problem solving, like Eric Van Doren. So, Eric, thanks again for your joining me today. I always make it very pleasurable. And I wish you all the best. Thank you all for listening. We'll talk to you again next week for sure. And until then, hey, go make somebody uncomfortable. How about that?